Yo, Darius Britt here. You know, I get a lot of questions, man. What camera should I buy, man? What light should I get? Should I buy a gimbal? Would this be better if I used seamless transitions? I get it. Everybody's trying to get to that next level of storytelling. But I feel like the focus tends to get misplaced. There's so many questions about gear, and I don't mind talking about gear, I guess, but there's just there's not many questions about craft. Film can be an expensive, cost-prohibitive art form. You need a lot of stuff to film. You need actors, you need money, a crew, cameras, mics, audio recorders, yada, yada, yada. But there are some things that make all of the difference that don't cost you any money, like framing and composition.
Preliminary owns 2 TIG, 37 minutes.
Just so we're clear, by framing, I mean the shot itself. The close-up, the medium, the wide, what's your angle, that sort of thing. A frame is a frame is a frame is a frame. It doesn't matter if you shot it on a cell phone or an Arri Alexa Mini. If you create great images with smart, intentional framing that helps you tell the story that you're trying to tell, bro, that's gonna make your work stand out more than anything else. That said, though, there are effective framing choices and then there are ineffective framing choices. When you put the camera where it needs to be to tell the story, right? When you put the camera in the best possible position to highlight what you're trying to highlight and cut out all the other distractions and things that people don't need to see, that pulls the audience into the story. That's an effective framing choice. Ineffective framing choices do the opposite. They're very distracting. You show us a whole lot of stuff we don't need to see. We get a lot of dead space. We miss important bits. We might see distracting elements. There's a reason why you typically cover emotional breakdowns in a close-up. If that actor's crying their eyeballs out, we need to see that. You know, we need to get in there. Give us the front row seats. Show me them tears. So effective and ineffective, what do I mean by all this? It sounds a little abstract as I'm saying it out loud. Might be better if I just show you guys an example. I shot a mini sequence with Kate Cannon to illustrate the difference. This is just a quick, dirty little thing to show you guys to get the point across. We're not looking at lighting, we're not looking at color grading, none of that other stuff, just framing choices. For those who care, I'm using a 25mm lens.
Weird math, they said they wouldn't date somebody in high school 2 years ago.
So what do you guys think? Kind of boring, right? So these are what I would call ineffective framing choices. First off, we're too far away. Why are we so far back from the action? The point of this shot is to show this person settling in, but in my opinion, it doesn't really need to be a wide shot. The walls are the brightest thing in the frame, which makes them kind of distracting. Our eyes go right to them. There's nothing to see. I mean, the walls are boring. There's nothing on them. Also, I don't think we need to see this much of the character to get the point across. In every shot, there's so much to look at, but most of these other details aren't really important, which makes them kind of distracting. Usually when you see this, the camera being so far back, if you were to ask the filmmaker, typically the answer would be they just didn't think about it. If we're too far away from the action, your audience isn't gonna feel it. They're not really gonna invest into it because there's a disconnect there visually. We're too far away. Now I'm not saying that every shot needs to be a close-up, but you really should get us as close as we need to be to really feel what's going on in the scene. Another thing I see a lot of are chest level shots. Notice how all of these shots were chest level. Doesn't matter if the actor's standing or sitting, the frame is still chest level. Some people do this without realizing that they're even doing it. It's wherever they're standing, that's where they press record. And when you do that, the camera always ends up right about chest level. The problem is that framing is not motivated by the story. You only ended up with that framing out of a habit. Also, if you're standing and your actors are sitting and you're doing that chest level thing, you might unintentionally be looking down on your characters, removing their power in the scene. If you're making somebody seem smaller or inferior in the frame, or you're removing power from them by looking down on them, that should be an intentional choice. That should not be an accidental framing choice. If you're just randomly looking down on your characters without a clear reason for doing so, it's just gonna read like amateur filmmaking. These framing examples were ineffective because they were not intentional framing choices. They happened by accident, and it feels that way. Here's that same sequence, but with a little more thought behind it.
Kind of weird math, they said they wouldn't date somebody in high school 2 years ago, and now I'm
Let's unpack. I went for a close-up of the person keys because they're the most important elements. Plus, from this angle, I could get the business of her turning the light on in the background. More action in one shot. Her pouring these chips is like the most important thing in the shot. This is her cool down ritual. This is what she does every day when she gets home. So I don't want you focused on anything else. I want to give her more power in the frame here. She's at home, she's in control, this is her territory, and the framing reflects that. We get a little closer so we can see what's going on with her, and I'm slightly below eye level to empower her. Again, all these are just quick and dirty examples to illustrate something that I see a lot. Stylistic choices. When it comes to filmmaking, there are no like hard and fast rules. Well, there is one rule: don't be boring. If you want to get cray-cray with the wide shots like Wes Anderson, hey, do your thing. More power to you. You can make all the stylistic choices you want. It's your world. I'm not saying you can't shoot a ton of wide shots. I'm not saying that you can't look down on your characters. All I'm saying is, you know, if you do those things, it should be done with a sense of intention. It shouldn't be done by accident. You shouldn't be looking down on your characters simply because you didn't realize that you were doing it. Framing up a shot is one of those few things in filmmaking that, you know, doesn't cost you anything. It's practically free. But the thought you put behind your framing and the attention to detail that you take to really think about the motivation behind the shots and what it's saying about your characters, and making sure you're giving your audience like front row tickets to see like all the goodnesses that you're putting up on that screen. If you're trying to step your stuff up to the next level in storytelling, I would focus more on my framing and my composition. Your framing choices make a huge difference in how people perceive your work. The devil is in the little details. When you're composing shots, it helps to start with the motivation. If we're looking up to or down at a character, why? What's the motivation? If we're moving closer to or further away from a character, why? Like, why are we that close? Why are we that far? And also, don't forget to hunt for the shot. There are shots that I have in my mind when I'm doing like the storyboarding and the shot listing, but sometimes you can get better shots just by taking a little bit of time on the day, you know, right before you're about to shoot, to just explore around and test out some other frames. Take your camera off the tripod, grab a stand-in or grab the actor if they're available, and just experiment with those shots, man. You know, like, let me try getting a little lower than I thought. How does this make me feel? You know what? Let me get a little further back and see if I can frame them around this wall or this doorway here, or maybe we got the window dirty in the background. Maybe let me go a little bit more this way and put them a little closer to that window. How does that make me feel? Let me back up. Let me get further. Like, and always be interrogating. What does it make you feel as a filmmaker, as an audience member? What might be some of the motivations for why we're looking at this composition? But take that time, man, and do not be surprised if you end up coming up with better shots than you envisioned. Before I shoot a scene, I almost like always experiment with framing first, even if I know what shots I'm getting. I just can't help it. Here's a few little things I did when I was starting out to help me kind of think more about my framing choices. Study other filmmakers, study some of your favorite movies, you know, like interrogate and ask questions. You know, why did they choose to go with the framing they did with this particular scene? What were they saying? Why did they go with this angle instead of another angle? Why did they go with a close-up instead of a medium or a wide shot? Every film is a textbook, even short films. Study other short films. You know, how are your peers using frames to tell their stories? Take what you like and experiment, borrow and use it on your next short film. If you like it, keep it. If you don't, lose it. Artists borrow from each other all the time. This is how we learn. There were several shots in Blade Runner that were recreated from Citizen Kane. Practice makes perfect. Keep learning, keep filming, start small, work your way up. If you're not confident in your framing choices now, go out and make 5 microfilms. Don't spend any money on them. Don't spend a whole lot of time on them. Just get out there, practice. I guarantee you, after you go out and shoot 5 microfilms, you're gonna feel a whole lot better about your framing choices. If you're still fuzzy on framing and composition, you should check out this video I did a while back. We cover all of the fundamentals about framing and composition, a little history, and we break down a short film. Get your knowledge up, bruh. As always, thank you for watching. Keep hustling. D-Bird out.